Greetings viewers, Hugh here coming to you from the cathedral city of York. Yes, I'm up north again. Not on the same trip as I was at the start of the month. As you can tell, I've had my hair cut, and this time not for recreational reasons either. I'm actually here with my university on a field trip. But I get some evenings off, meaning I'm able to do some train stuff. So yeah, what this video basically is an attempted compilation of the train stuff I've done during my days up here in York. And actually, to start the video off, we're going to go back in time, as actually I've already done one thing, and the reason why I couldn't film the intro before that is because I got here with a very, very tight connection. So let's go back to past me at Church Fenton. So, I'm at Church Fenton. The reason why I've come here is not just to tick it off as a new station, but also to get a new train that I didn't get when I was in Leeds earlier in the month. And that is the Class 155, which is pretty cool. I think it's kind of a bit of a rare train. It's basically two Class 153s stuck together. And I've heard it's the reason why Northern doesn't operate many 153s these days, because a lot of them got converted into 155s. Anyway, I've got about 10 minutes to wait here for this one, which is actually coupled to a 158, but the leading unit, I believe, is a 155, which is good. And either way, I'm going in the 155 bit, as I've been on my fair share of Northern 158s already. And we're going to take it back to York. And then when I get back to York, which is actually where I filmed the intro for this, because busyness, I'm going to just have a look around York Station. So yeah, I'll see you on the 155. Well, that was unplanned, actually seeing a Class 153 come through here. Yeah, that's interesting. Good lord. Oh god, it's got the Leyland logo on it. It's a bus. So here we are on a Class 155, and yeah, this is the worst Northern train I have been on so far. Jesus, it has Leyland logos in the doorways, which gives me the assumption that these are kind of rail bus originated, and also from the scheme on the back of the seats and the poles in the doorways, I'm going to take the assumption these used to operate for Arriva Wales or for some Arriva TOC, just by the colouring or something. Maybe these haven't been with Northern for the whole time, but yeah, it's got a Northern maquette. But normally, of course, these top holes would be yellow. Seats are alright. Seats are the same as trains like the 357. 357 is the one that comes to mind. But a bunch of other trains use these seats, but good lord, this isn't very good. Although, I will give Northern props for fitting USBs. That's a very good thing, so well done Northern. I think every Northern train I've been on so far does have USBs, although it does have the old style openable windows. Yeah, this is a lot more bus-like than any other train I've been on. This has got to be one of the loudest, if not the loudest, train I've ever been on. It's, yeah, not very good. I'd certainly prefer, well, I'd probably prefer to be in the 158 coupled at the back, but I'm only going one stop, so, you know. But I'd much prefer being on any other Northern train, other than maybe the 150, than this. Like, yeah, 155 gets a no from me. So, we're now approaching York. So, that's the Class 155, which, considering there's only 7 of them still in service, it's probably one of the hardest trains to ride in Britain, because, again, there's only 7 of them left. I was kind of incorrect earlier. Quite a lot of them were actually converted from 155s into 153, so over 40 were built, but only 7 are still around. And, yeah, it's not the nicest of trains, but it's quite nice to ride. Again, a very rare piece of traction. Anyway, we're going back into York, and I'll see you there. So now I'm back at York, I think I should explore one of Britain's most famous railway stations. I mean, it is pretty cool, isn't it? I have come here before in my life. Part of the reason why I actually went to Leeds earlier in this month, not just because I had the wonderful Jack there, who's a local, but also because York is the one place in the north that I have been to many times in my life. In fact, until earlier this month, the last time I properly went to the north was coming here, because I have family who live not too far away from here. And to show you how long ago it was, Virgin Trains East Coast was still a thing. So, you know, today we have Hitachis everywhere. Back then, of course, you still had HSTs, you had 225s coming here. Well, they still do come here, but this is the furthest north they go. So the first little thing I want to look at here at York is actually this part, which I forgot existed. I thought it was all underneath the big train shed there, but no, it's not. There's a TP-802 coming in, and behind me is a Northern 170. Pro tip, you want to find a Northern 170, they will always be running the Leeds to York service via Harrogate, although, pro tip, at Leeds it'll say the train's going to Poppleton, and if you're at York it says it's going to Burley Park. That's just purely because of the stopping system. But yeah, if you want to ride Northern 170, that's the route to go for. But yeah, I completely forgot about this, and the reason why I did is because I came up here by Azuma with my university. I didn't film on the train because my university hired an entire carriage, which was nice of them, but you know, it's full of other students, and I don't normally like showing off my YouTube work to other students and all that. And we came in here, and I completely forgot that York actually has platforms out here, which is, yeah, very bizarre. Anyway, enough about the boring bit. Let's go into the really cool bit. So I'm just walking down the platforms here, just admiring it, honestly. Like, I don't really have much else to say, but it is just such an amazing station to visit. It's just, it's so big. Although the constant announcements don't really help either. Also, this LNER train stops at Northallerton, which is kind of cool. Do put it in the comments below. How frequently does LNER call at Northallerton? I know I think they manage Northallerton Station. I could be wrong, but I think they manage it. But how frequently does LNER call at Northallerton? Because this is going to Newcastle, so I'd imagine it's like a slow train. Anyway, now people are going to say in the comments, Hugh, you're in York. You're a rail enthusiast. There's one thing you have to do. Why haven't you mentioned it? Don't worry, we'll get there. Here's something pretty cool. An old map of the North Eastern Railway that has been preserved here at York Station, because I'm assuming the North Eastern Railway was the original railway company that came through here. So you can see they're pretty powerful. Apparently it dates from 1900. Anyway, that's going to be the end of this first little adventure in New York. I'll hopefully see you tomorrow for another one. Hey everyone, it's another day here in York, and well, I'm currently standing on the viewing platform of the National Railway Museum that overlooks the East Coast Main Line. Now, I'm actually here as part of my university, but unfortunately I didn't film much inside the museum because I was with other students, but here's a narrated montage of all the cool stuff I saw. So, this is just the little narrated compilation of all the stuff I saw at the NRM. This is not really going off a script, so it's a bit random, but here we go. So, I saw some replica carriages from the Liverpool and Manchester Railway, which is one of the oldest railways in Britain. Again, not original, but replicas, which was quite cool. I also saw an LMS Coronation class, Duchess of Hamilton, the streamlined train. Not in the best position to get a photo of, but it's a pretty cool looking train, and it held the British speed record until a train that we will see later in this broke it. I also saw an electric prototype, Class 84, which is one of the many locomotive designs that were tested when the West Coast Main Line was being electrified in the early 60s. Didn't really see much time in service, but that was pretty cool. Sadly, no 86s, 87s, or 90s, which is some of my favourite locomotives. There was also the dynamometer car, which was used to measure Mallard's speed record. Unfortunately, it was behind a hoarding while I was there, which is a bit of a shame. I also saw a Class 47. Just a Class 47, you know, one of the most popular locomotives in Britain. Just one, hanging around there. And then, of course, I saw the HST Power Car 43002, named after the late Sir Kenneth Grange, who designed it. Pretty cool to see that. Had a look in the cab. I believe it ran the last ever HST service out of Paddington back in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. And I also saw a Eurostar Class 373, which, you know, pretty cool to see a old Eurostar thing. And speaking of the Channel Tunnel, a Channel Tunnel works train that would haul workers and spoil out to the Channel Tunnel. And then I also saw an IET cab mock-up, just a mock-up of the Class 80X, and probably one of the most famous exhibits in the NRM, a Zero Series Shinkansen, which is one of the only Shinkansen trains to be displayed outside Japan, and it was pretty cool. Got to go inside and everything. And of course, the most famous train in the NRM's collection, the LNER Gresley A4 Pacific Mallard, the fastest steam train in the world. And that's all I saw in the main shed, which is full of iconic trains, but all of the real treasure was in the North Shed. So, in the North Shed, I saw many cool things, starting off with models of different types of East Coast mainline traction, from the A1 locomotives from the 1930s, right up to the Intercity 225 of the 1990s, including other stuff like the Gresley A4s, the Deltics, and the HSTs. And next to that, I saw a bunch of Flying Scotsman headboards that were of course used on the iconic service that still runs today from Edinburgh Waverley to London King's Cross. And then next to that, I saw a Class 55 Deltic, 55002, King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry, or Coily, which of course ran the East Coast Main Line from the early 60s right up until the early 1980s. And then next to that, I saw a model of a Mark III DVT and a Mark IV coach. Kind of bizarre to see those two together, as they never worked together in service, as the Intercity 225 had its own special DVTs. And then above that, I saw an amazing early model of a DLR P86 in a very bizarre old livery, which is quite cool. And then I saw some old signage panels that I think were Rail Freight and GNER originated, which is pretty cool. And I also saw an early model of what I think is a Class 86 in older BR livery, and then next to that what I believe is a Class 37. Not sure really about the 86 though, it had a different number on it, but I think it's an 86. And then I saw a Virgin Cross Country Super Voyager nameplate, bearing the name of famous Monty Python star Michael Palin, and after doing a bit of research I found out it used to belong to Unit 221130, which still works with Cross Country today, although I believe Cross Country removed most of the nameplates after Arriva took over. Then I saw a model of the 1960s rebuild of Euston Station, which, of course, is bad, but, you know, it was still quite cool seeing that. And then I saw a model of DP1, the Deltic prototype, which is actually part of the NRM's collection, but is actually at Locomotion at Shildon and not at York. And beside it were some models of what I think are Mark III coaches and Class 86s. After that, I saw two pretty cool models of both the Class 93 locomotive and the original Mark V coaches planned as part of the Intercity 250 project, which would have been a spiritual successor to the Intercity 225 for the West Coast Main Line, however was eventually cancelled, which is a bit of a shame as it looked really cool, although I guess if it did go ahead, we wouldn't have this. So it's a fair trade-off. I then saw a model of what I think is a Class 317 carriage, though I'm not so sure. It definitely is a Mark III EMU style carriage model. And then a model of BREL's 1972 PEP design, which would go on to form the basis of the recently retired PEP family that my friends will never ever not stop talking about. And then I saw some incredible models, which I was very confused looking at first, because I looked at the track going, why does that train look so European, of the original 1960s and 70s plans for the Channel Tunnel rail link in Kent, with the line running alongside existing third rail lines, and well, looks kind of similar to the line we eventually got, doesn't it? And then I saw a Victoria Line tunnel cross section, basically a model showing the different equipment inside the tunnels of the Victoria Line, which is quite cool. And then I saw some models of new rolling stock that was presumably introduced with the first phase of West Coast electrification, which basically they ran between London and Birmingham. And then I saw a National Express hat in a cabinet with a bunch of GNER and other railway staff stuff, which I hoped was from the days of National Express East Coast, which I believe is one of the shortest-lived TOCs ever, which is pretty cool. And then, up near the gallery, I saw a model of a Class 150, which I assume was there to honour York's works, as York was home to a BREL factory that made many famous multiple units throughout the era of British Rail. And then, I paid a quick visit to the gallery. And that's all I saw at the National Railway Museum. It was pretty cool. I definitely would recommend going there yourself and getting a souvenir. I got this t-shirt. The shork was an extra. So it's the next day after I went to the Railway Museum, and today this is kind of the last little thing I wanted to do. There's not been much I've been doing, honestly, but just down from here is a Network Rail training centre, I think, or some building to do with Network Rail, and it has a live camera on top that shows the trains coming into and out of York. So I've just informed my Discord server that at 4:30, which is in about 15 minutes, I'm going to walk up to it and say hello, and hopefully they've recorded it. So hopefully the next thing you'll see is me walking down to the end of platform 11 and waving to the camera. So I think that's the building over there. The camera is somewhere on there. I can't work out exactly where, but somewhere up there there's a little camera, and we're going to say hello. So just for some fun closure to this light-hearted little segment, while I was walking down to wave to the camera, apologies if the footage was a bit poor. It's probably because no one sent me a recording, and I had to use my own recording, which was recorded over a mobile internet and was very low quality. I was walking down here to wave at the camera, and a cross-country train bound for Edinburgh pulled in, and it was being operated by 221-109, which is one of the two voyages that I took when they still ran with Avanti. So it's pretty cool. It's the second time in my life I've seen the same train with two different operators. 707-015 was the first one. So this is quite bizarre. This 800's just pulled in. I was thinking, oh, is it a Northern Lights or a Highland Chieftain? It's not. Apparently it's just ran a stopper service between here and Newcastle. Is that normal? I didn't know LNER did a stopper train between York and Newcastle. So that's interesting, because it's not going to London, it's just stabled here. I looked on RTT and it said it comes from Newcastle to York, so that's very interesting. So as I'm heading back to my account, this Plymouth train's pulling in. Look at that! 220-005, the Pride one. And well, that is all I really got up to during my stay here in York. I am currently here in this very nice little park overlooking the River Ouse, the Railway Museum and the East Coast Main Line are behind those trees. It's the day before I return home, so yeah, there's that. But that's it. I hope you enjoyed this little compilation of railway goodness, and I will see you very soon. Bye-bye, everyone.